This episode of the Wedding Film School Show is brought to you by MusicBed, the best music licensing platform for wedding filmmakers. Head over to themusicbed.com and enter our code WFS on checkout to get a free month on your annual wedding subscription. Now, on to the show.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Lindsey, but sometimes wedding filmmakers don't get along with wedding photographers.
I don't know if I've ever heard that, actually. Anytime you have a bad experience with a photographer, be honest with yourself. How could I have handled this situation better? I always come into any situation, any wedding, when we're working with a photographer, to me, I view them as my boss. I'm not driving the ship, but they, in many ways, are.
And it's they're not the only ones who are important. I'm like, ask the couple how they feel about that. If you have that mindset, you need to get over yourself and you need to really consider the impact you're having on this person's photos.
Yeah, my lifelong goal is to not end up on a TikTok or something where I'm circling around the couple on the dance floor or something like that.
Get right in my bag. Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.
Hey guys, welcome to the Wedding Film School Show. I'm here with my part-time co-host, Lindsey Conklin from Rêve. How you doing, Lindsey?
I'm very good. How are you?
Wonderful. I'm ready to get this one started. We just talked about how to make planners love you. It was kind of a all over the place conversation of, some qualities you would definitely want to exemplify and some ways that you can, I think, overall increase your referrals from planners. And a lot of people don't even work with planners. So maybe you want to work with planners more often. Just some things you can do that when a planner works with you, they're going to be like, oh, that filmmaker was awesome. So go check that episode out if you want to learn about how to make planners love you and this is something you're interested in. But today we're going to talk about something a little bit different, which is how to make photographers love you. I think there's some differences there, right, Lindsey?
Yes, it can't be done. No, I'm just kidding. No, just kidding. There's differences. I mean, there's a lot of similarities. So definitely go back and listen to the planner episode because I think that, a lot of those same principles do apply. But it's different because we are both working in similar, spaces. We're having to weave in and out of each other. We're trying to, provide a product that the client is expecting, the planner is expecting, all at the same time, while still trying to, work on our own, maybe personal
you're rubbing shoulders
and all that stuff. Yeah, you're rubbing shoulders.
So breathe in the same airspace and yeah.
If you aren't careful, it can get dicey. And the reason you don't want it to get dicey, you want to have a good working relationship with photographers is A, it's going to make the day so much smoother, way more enjoyable. But at the end of the day, I know for me personally, we get a lot of our referral business from photographers. Number one is planners, but a lot of photographers send us business or they refer us to other planners when a planner is asking a photographer, hey, for this wedding, who would you like to work with for video? Because planners, they realize how important, that relationship is between a photographer and a videographer.
Well, and I can tell you, a planner's not going to hire a filmmaker who the photographer hates.
100%.
They're not going to do 100%. It. They're just not. No. And so I think at the end of the day, this is related, but there's some differences. So we're going to talk about that today. But before we do that, I just want to give you a chance. Tell everybody about the LUT that you guys are producing. Because one of the things that's interesting that you said last episode is this was a LUT that was kind of designed to complement a lot of the photographers that you work with. And I think it's interesting. That was a different way of thinking about maybe doing color for your brand.
Yeah. So we've released a LUT. It's available for a limited time. I think at the airing of this episode, there's only a few more days left to grab it. It'll be available through October 17th. And this is a LUT that we developed. It comes with several different presets that are all designed for different lighting conditions and scenarios. But when we started looking at the market that we wanted to get into, the weddings that we wanted to do, we started looking at the photographers. Who are the photographers that are doing the weddings that we would like to do? What's their style? What do their colors look like? And so we kind of approached it from the mindset of, how do we make our video more consistent with the photographers that are doing the weddings that we want to do, because we feel like if it's consistent, if they look together, it's cohesive. The photographer or the planner is obviously, if they're recommending that photographer, they're going to be happy with the video because it's going to look consistent with the brand that they're trying to create and portray. The client should be happy because they have, two products that are consistent with each other. And so that's kind of the approach that we took with our style. And it got to the point we just recently, over the last, couple of years, people are constantly messaging us, other videographers, what cameras are you using? What LUTs are you using? How do you get that? And not that to say that we're, the best out there at color grading, but that was kind of like an indication to us that, hey, maybe we're onto something. Maybe this is something that we should provide. So we're kind of testing the waters. That's the whole purpose behind the limited release. We've never done this before. Let's get it out there into the hands of people, see what they do with it. So if you're interested, you can go to LaReveLuts.com, which is LEREVE, Luts, LUTS.com, and check them out. They're $175.
If you're interested in that, I think what the editorial luxury look, it's definitely going to be something that might help you get there. So definitely check it out. So when I got started in wedding filmmaking, I was 12 years ago, and we didn't know anything about wedding filmmakers. And so our journey as wedding filmmakers was like, just talk to cool wedding photographers that were in the area, right? And we would I remember early on, there was some gatherings, and we would just go to these, and we were the only filmmakers. And we would go, and we were always we didn't know anything. We had dinner with all these photographers. We weren't tactical. We just didn't know what else to do, and we wanted to hang out with other artists. Mm-hmm. And we were the only people we knew who made wedding videos.
Yeah.
And
little did you know that was the best thing that you could have ever done for your business.
It was. And I think looking back on that, I think that ideology has been instrumental into we are doing 200 weddings this year. Of course we do the off backyard wedding, but in general, we're working some of the same venues that Rêve would be working. Mm-hmm. High-end venues with high-end photographers, more localized, less destination, but whatever the top of our market is, that's what we're doing every weekend. And I would say we're probably 60% of our referrals are planners, but 40% of our referrals are photographers. And I think what we have done is make photographers love us. They love us as people. They love to work with us. And so I was like, we should talk about that too, because I have found, correct me if I'm wrong, Lindsey, but sometimes wedding filmmakers don't get along with wedding photographers.
I don't know if I've ever heard that, actually. No, of course I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's you can pretty much guarantee if you're scrolling through any of the Facebook groups, there's going to be at least one, maybe more rants a day about, photographers, poor working experiences between photo video teams.
And some are justified, but
some are.
Most I would overlook. And that's and that's what I honestly tell people is I don't know, man. And they're like, well, so if this is how you feel, you're not going to like this episode. If you side with, well, I'm the artist too, and I should get my opportunity, blah, 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 and that's how you feel about wedding photographers, you're not going to like our take on it because that's really not how we feel about working with these people, and it's not the way that we approach it. So we're going to talk about some stuff we do to make wedding photographers love working with us. So Lindsey, are you kind of a similar group? Are you 60, 40, 70, 30 planners, wedding photographers?
We were, as we've, gotten into a little bit higher end market, it's, we're just having more planners, that are doing the weddings that we want to do reach out to us, but we're probably 70-30, somewhere around there.
Yep.
And a lot of the photographers that we've worked with have even referred us to some of the planners now.
Yes, that happens a lot too.
So that's pretty great. So even there are certain like planners that refer us all the time, and indirectly it's because of a referral from a photographer. So that's something to think about. So they kind of get a default referral.
I always tell people
next
like
to
there's like a wedding food chain. You need to know this.
100%.
And like
there's a pecking order for sure.
it's like planners, photographers. You're somewhere down there
towards the bottom. Yeah,
you know,
that's okay though.
It is okay. It's really about what is the known quantity here. Like I need to just take what's known and create order out of it for my business. I don't need to worry about changing. Like this is my thing that drives me nuts, Lindsey. Is like, who cares if everyone thinks photography is worth more? Why do you care? Why are you focused on that? Then go make wedding photography.
Right. Exactly.
Like
you know what's funny is and honestly, the lengths that planners and even some photographers have to go to get these referrals, to get the business, is a lot harder, than it is for a videographer that's getting the benefit of those referrals from planners and photographers. So, and I'd much rather do that, than have to, hustle to get my brand out there in other ways.
I think I'm going to break this into 3 categories when working with photographers. And we're kind of thinking context of a wedding, right? So let's start with before the day, Lindsey. For you, with the Rêve, like what are some things that you've found make photographers love you that you might do before the wedding even starts?
Yeah, I think, simple communication, reaching out. If it's somebody that you have not worked with before, it's always good to introduce yourself. That photographer might have a little bit of an anxiety, because they don't know what they're getting.
PTSD.
Because, again, as we mentioned, they have PTSD, right? They've had bad experiences in the past, which is sad. Like there shouldn't be that type of stereotype, when it comes to working with another vendor at the wedding, but there might be, because of past experience. And so just, setting their mind at ease and letting them know just your process, so that there's no like fear of the unknown.
How detailed do you try to get into that with them? Like with the Rêve, like when you give them a little text or a little email?
Yeah, I mean, man, it's been so long because a lot of times we're working with photographers that we've just now been working with for a few years. And so I'm trying to think back, but I would guess, if I can think back to different conversations I've had, it's less about getting into the details, about, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And just more about like getting to know them as a person, and like they'll sense right away whether or not you're going to be somebody that's easy to work with or difficult to work with, just by how you talk to them.
You would be stunned how few of these people ever get reached out to, though. Like,
oh yeah, like
it is not the norm. I'm not gonna lie, I don't always do it.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I often, especially when I'm like, I don't know this person at all, usually I try to text. And what I will always say is, hey, I'm Jason from Stop Go Love or Huxley Films, depending on what I'm representing. I just wanted to reach out, let you know, or so you have my number in case there are any needs on the wedding day. And that's it.
Yeah,
I don't try to insert myself in their process. I don't even explain my process. I let them know it without saying it. This is about you and whatever you need from me. And I think like there are,
it just sets the tone.
Yes, I think it sets the tone. And the only time I'll say more is if I maybe have like a separate session that I've requested, and I will always tell that person, hey, from this time to this time, the planner has a video session, but I'd love it if you can be there.
I've been so spoiled with sometimes not having to reach out to photographers, even ones that we haven't reached out to, that I've been burned before for not reaching out. We did a wedding, and I'm not going to give too many details.
A wedding in a place.
We did a wedding in a really awesome location that was, overseas. We showed up to town a couple of days early, and we thought we were doing the right thing by, like, we let the planner know. We even messaged the photographer and let them know that we were in town, and they were like, "Oh, great." But that was it. And we were just enjoying our free time, like the day before the events were supposed to happen. Well, we ended up waking up one morning, and the photographer had done this awesome shoot with the couple.
Yeah.
But hadn't told us about it. Had not told us about it. And the photos were incredible. And we were just, our heart sank because we're like, oh my gosh, we should have been there. Like, why weren't we there? Why didn't anybody tell us? You know, we would have absolutely jumped on that opportunity had somebody told us that we, you know, they were doing this. You know, and the planner and the photographer had a really close relationship. They knew each other really well. So
they're like usually symbiotic. Like you need to realize like you're the third wheel.
we were the third wheel, you know, and we could have done more to prevent that. By the end of the wedding, they loved us. We had a great relationship with them. We even like reposted those pictures of the photo shoot that we weren't at on our Instagram because we were like, okay, we have one of two choices. We could be bitter about this and be upset, or give them the benefit of the doubt, promote them, lift them up, and just show that, hey, we're team players. Like
and by the way, next time if you work with them, they're going to invite you.
They will invite us next time.
They will, and it's like that's really what you want. Is you want to. I think when you're the wedding filmmaker, when you're dealing with the alpha, which is the photographer, and I don't care who likes that, it's the freaking truth. So just suck it up and deal with it. Mm-hmm. They're the boss.
Yep.
When I'm dealing with that person, the best way for me to succeed is without demanding it, letting them know what I would like without requesting it. Like if the person knows that I would like to be part of any session that they do, and they realize I'm not going to be a pain in their butt and it's not going to kill them for me to do it, they might be likely to do it. But not every photographer is going to want you there. And you need to know that. Like you need to, when you're so bold to ask for those things, like you need to realize like some filmmakers are morons and ruin that session for them. And they're like, the last thing I want is to have a filmmaker at this sunrise session. I don't want to deal with those idiots. Like, that's not about you necessarily. You're trying to unpack that trauma for them with the day.
And I think, honestly, that's exactly what happened. You know, this was a big wedding for them too. They were, you know, trying to make something happen, trying to like create some portfolio pieces. And so they were probably just thinking, we don't want this nuisance of a videographer that we'd never worked with, you know, getting in the way, you know? And so it really does help to, if you've never worked with a photographer before, just reach out, set their mind at ease so that they know that you're going to be there to enhance their day. You're there to serve them and help make their job easier, help make their job better. And it really is a sales tool. Like when we have consultations with clients, I always tell people, you know, when you hire us, especially if it's a photographer we've already worked with, I let them know when you hire us, we're going to work so well with your photographer that you're going to make sure you get your money's worth, if not more, you know, that you're paying for, you know, this photographer to be there and vice versa.
The amount of times I've had clients literally say to me when I say, because I always make sure to like let them know, because they want to know, oh, all these people like each other. That matters to clients a lot. And
it matters.
When I say to them like, oh, Joe, I love Joe. Oh, I just worked with him 2 weeks ago. It is so great. I cannot wait. I'll say something like, oh, this day is going to be so easy now because you got Joe involved, or because you got Elizabeth involved, or because you got, like, whatever the person is, like letting them know the familiar, like once you gain this relationship with this person, even with your clients, you can use it as a sales tool because they want to know, like, they're not going to be at each other's throat and they're going to know how to like dance together.
Yeah. Yeah, something you said earlier, you know, when you guys first started out and you were just hanging out with other photographers, kind of makes me think of this a little bit. Like most videographers, they just hang out in other videography groups, which is is great. It is great. You know, it's beneficial.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Like even this conversation, there's nothing wrong with it. However, if you're only hanging out with videographers, you're only going to think like a videographer, right? But if you have other friends in the industry, if you're, you know, hanging out with photographers and you know, chatting with them and stuff like that, then you're going to get a different perspective that's going to help you and give you an advantage in your business. Not to mention, if they like you, you're going to get those opportunities, those job opportunities. And so that's huge.
I think that is a great point, is like getting outside of like the video circle and trying to understand, like, photographers like are very different in a lot of ways. What they talk about, the way that like they talk about branding a lot more. They talk about their clients' personal experiences a lot more. They don't talk about gear hardly at all. Filmmakers are way behind photographers in style.
Yeah.
Like they don't know, they dress worse. their color is less cutting edge. Like everything photographers are doing is gonna, if you get around these people, it will elevate your business because you'll be on the cutting edge of what's actually selling and what is trendy and cool. Versus filmmakers who, like, just by nature of how long it takes to make a freaking wedding film, like we're just always gonna be a little bit behind. So it's like I need these photographers to keep me cool and relevant.
Our whole introduction to like networking and relationship building in general came from some photographers that we were working a lot with back in the day. We were on this one preferred vendor list when we first started, and we were just constantly working with these photographers over and over again. We developed a relationship with them. They're of course working, anywhere and everywhere in our hometown, all the top venues, and they're like, "Hey, you guys are awesome. You need to come to this networking group that we have." And we're like, what? There's a networking group, And so if it wasn't for them, we would have never even been introduced to this whole world of networking and, creating relationships. That kind of brings us to like how we interact with them on the day.
Yeah.
Because you want to be remembered, right? And that's where the secret sauce comes. Like, yeah, you reach out to them beforehand. There's things you can do beforehand, but ultimately at the end of the day, how you interact with them, how you work with them is going to make or break.
Because you probably have an opportunity to do this every single week, guys. If you're listening to this, every week you show up and shoot a wedding, you have the opportunity to make a good impression. And maybe it's not like one of Harper's top 10 photographers, but maybe they have 25 weddings they could refer. Whatever it is for you and your business, it all makes a difference. So like, don't look your nose up at people. Just do your best to like create that referral. So every week you have this opportunity. So what are some of the stuff that people can do to make a photographer love them at an event?
Yeah. Before I answer that question, one thing I want to add is sometimes high-profile photographers, especially now with like COVID and postponements and reschedules, sometimes a high-end photographer is doing a lower-end wedding just because of the way things worked out. They might have booked it years in advance, right? And now they're like having to. So just, again, don't judge who the photographer is, even based on the wedding. Maybe you think, well, this is probably a lower budget wedding, whatever. Maybe this photographer is not worth, working hard to get them to like me. But you never know.
I have a couple examples of that where I'm just
exactly. So do I.
Show up at the wedding and I'm like, I remember doing a wedding and not that he does massive luxury, but he has 400,000 Instagram followers. And I was like, oh, I'm going to this wedding in San Francisco. And I look at the person and I was like, oh, that's Binge Heish. I'm like, Binge Heish is doing this wedding? And then I was like, oh, okay. So I've since done like 3 or 4 weddings with him because I was like, oh, wow. Like, I really like his work. He's a really cool guy. Oh, we met him at a conference a few years ago. Oh, he's really nice. Like, you put it all together, but it was not like some big mega celebrity wedding.
Yep, exactly. So on the day, answer your question. Again, we've already talked about hinted about being easy to work with. That is huge for a photographer.
Why don't you define that a little for people? What is easy to work with, and what's the opposite?
Well, and we kind of said this too with the part 1 of this podcast talking about planners. It starts with a mindset. If you come in thinking that you're better than anybody else there, but especially the photographer, and that you're more important, you're just naturally going to make decisions that will rub the photographer the wrong way. So I always come into any situation, any wedding, when we're working with a photographer, and I view them as my boss, right? Mm-hmm. They are running the show. They have a long list of photos that they have to get. I'm there in many ways just to document the day as it happens. I don't dictate a lot of things. I'm not driving the ship, but they, in many ways, are. In many, aspects, they're trying to fulfill their list while also maintaining a schedule. And so, if you're doing anything that's going to derail that, if you're slowing them down, if you're getting in the way, if they're having to wait for you to do something, if you're taking the details, into another area and you're filming it and they're looking for those details, you can't be doing stuff like that. Or if you're taking the client away from them to do your own thing, because you have this awesome, shot or vision in your head. But if that in any way interferes with what they have to do in their schedule, that's already going to be, bad strike on you. So just stuff like that, remembering what they have on their shoulders, because they have a lot of stress, on wedding days.
And you can imagine as a filmmaker, like you can imagine that what you're doing is harder, and maybe technically in some ways it is harder, but I would say do that to your own detriment in terms of going too far with that, because first of all, you don't know. Some of you might have done both, but in general, most people haven't. And second of all, it doesn't really matter what you think. All that matters is like the result that you want. And the result I want is that when they do their details, I'm not moving anything. I'm not touching anything. I was telling you in the last podcast, we come an hour early. We come an hour early so I can do all that stuff without them. And then I can make sure that when they show up, it's all in one place. So I say to them, hey, I'm going to come because it takes me a little longer to do the dress, and they might not. Sometimes I don't like the way photographers want to do certain details because they are using light I don't like. So I know I'm going to maybe want more cinematic shot or something that benefits me. In order to do that, I'm going to come hours so that by the time that person shows up, sometimes I leave it. I'm like, oh, this is dope. They're going to like this. And so I leave it and say, hey, I set this up for you upstairs. You feel free to move it. I'll help you, but I think you're going to like it. I'm considering them I always tell the client, I don't want to be in their way. When they arrive, I want to be done so that whatever they're doing, I just don't have to worry about it. Like, I'm not going to be in their way. I might say, hey, can I snipe a few shots? And you got to know that too. Some photographers don't like it when you take their sets.
Yes, because they spend all this time working on these, these flat lays or whatever, and then you just come in and go, oh, this looks great, and just steal.
You got to ask.
It from them.
I always ask. I do. Say, hey, do you mind if I
shoot that?
Hey, this is beautiful. Can I get an image of this? I really feel like the client would like it. I actually will say, the planner would love this. Can I get a shot? But like, you got to know, like, every part of that is their art form. Like, some of them are known for like lay flats, and if I'm going there and just basically jumping on their shot, taking shots from them and getting my own reputation built on their lay flat, you got like.
And sometimes you'll know if the photographer cares or not without them actually telling you, because they might say, hey, do you want to shoot this stuff? And if you say yes, and if they like bunch it up and like hand it to you, that means they didn't want you to, basically copy their design that they made. Yeah, I've had that happen before where they're like, okay, here you go. And they hand it to you. They pick it up, they move it.
Yeah. I mean,
which is totally fine.
It is what it is. It's just like knowing that like the second that day starts, you're like, I always try to remind my guys, like my team, when I'm educating people, I'm like, there are 3 or 4 times in the day where you can really piss off a photographer. And one of them is at the very beginning. And that's like with those details in that dress. Like, you need to be extra careful. If you prove to be a creative partner with that person, like a lot of them will be like, oh, does that look good? Should I move this? Like, that's my engagements with most of them. And so like, that's your goal. Your goal is that person shows up and there's no threat whatsoever. And both of you are just vibing and going. I went the other day, and I don't know if this happens to you still, Lindsey, but I showed up. It was an event in Maine, which has like less of a vendor pool, less of a like high end kind of like, it's not like the Newport world where everyone knows exactly how everything goes. You have a big variety. Right. So I go with the photographer and I walk in and I say, hey guys, and I do my normal nice thing. And the photographer kind of looks at me like, hi guys. And I'm like, okay, I just before you move the dress, I just want to like, get a shot. So I'm like, great. And they're like, okay, fine. And I could tell. I pull the second out and I go, listen, these people don't like us. By the end of the day, they will. But right now, they don't like us. So don't let them out of your sight, because they will take that dress down and they will hide it. And so You
Right.
need to stay with them and shoot that dress. I knew I was in a certain situation with that photographer. Like I said, hey, can I just take an image of that ring before you bring it back? And she's like, well, the client entrusted it to me. That was her response. I was like, oh, lady, like, you think this is my first rodeo? Like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're going to make the photographer, like, you're going to bring it all the way back to the client, make me ask for it again. Like, that's ridiculous, right? But I didn't get offended. I just said, oh, trust me, I'm just going to take it right here. Like, I am playing fireman from the very beginning of the day with that person.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, they loved me.
Of course.
But at the beginning of the day, they did not. And I think how you handle that first touch point with that person, when you can tell there's tension, really will set the entire tone.
Yep. It's so true. And that's the thing is, anytime you have a bad experience with a photographer, like, be honest with yourself, think back and be like, okay, how could I have handled this situation better? Because you have a choice to make. Like Jason, in that moment, you had a choice when you got that vibe. You could have said, okay, well, it's going to be one of those days and I'm just going to do my thing and I don't care if this person likes me or not. And then what would have resulted? A crappy day.
Bad portrait session later in the day.
You're bitter all day, bad portraits. People are unhappy. But you made a conscious choice to not get offended, to give that person the benefit of the doubt, and look at the results.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I thought it was actually super amateurish of them, but I was just thinking in my head, like, what are my choices here?
What are you gonna do? Yeah,
my choices are like, I can show them, oh, do you know who you're dealing with here? I have a podcast,
right? Right.
Like, or I can like teach this other filmmaker I'm with, like, this is how to handle this because our client deserves good images. Mm-hmm. And I need this photographer to not screw me because they have the power to do so. And so like they shot the groom details without the second, even though I tried to, like, they were out to get us for the first 2 hours of the day. Mm-hmm. And I was cool, man. Like it was on me to fix it. It's not on them. And I think that's what I would tell you guys is at the beginning of the day, when you get into that interaction, when you first show up and you're trying to make their day easier, you are the one who's trying to fix any tension that, like, you're like a therapist from whatever experiences they've had in the past. Uh-huh. So,
and sometimes we need therapy after, a wedding day, but
yes,
in that moment, you got to be the strong one. Being helpful. I'm pretty tall. So if we even do dress shots nowadays, I'll always like offer, hey, do you need me to put this anywhere? Can I hang this up for you? Moving furniture, just being whatever you can do to be helpful, not standing around, not getting in their way, not trying to, steal their shots.
Yeah. Literally just noticing
standoffish.
What direction they're shooting.
Sometimes I'll, I might be getting ahead of myself, but, towards the end of the night, offering, hey, do you need a water? Do you need something to drink? Things like that, go a long way. And oftentimes they're going to say, no, I'm good, but what internally, what are they hopefully thinking about me? Oh, man, what a nice guy.
And you can't always win these, by the way, guys. I'm not saying every
that's
photographer you can win over, but like, it's a fun game.
It's a challenge. Yeah.
I love it. And so, I find like a lot of people who the very first impression with, cause I'm a lot and I know that about myself. And I know, like, I'm done trying to change myself in some ways where I'm like, I'm not going to able to be Jared or Lindsey or certain types of personalities, but I can be maximally helpful and sincere. And I think a big thing is I'm considerate. Like, I can consider what their needs are, and I can and this is what I'll tell you. If you're listening, verbalizing your consideration is big. Yeah. Like, hey, I know you need that shot, so this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
Like, that'll help people a lot. So, okay, you're getting ready. There's a lot that goes into there. One of the things that inevitably is going to happen after you first arrive is there's going to be like some kind of session, whether it be a first look or whatever. So we're getting into like portraits and moments like that. What's some stuff that people can do to make a photographer love you especially during portrait sessions with just the couple, but even during maybe family or group sessions?
Yeah. For me, in my experience, we're super laid back on the wedding day, so I'm not taking the couple and being overly aggressive with where we're placing them, with what poses they're doing necessarily. A lot of times I let the photographer take the lead in that. But what I will do when I do know that I want something, or I do know that I need something, my approach, instead of necessarily barking out those orders to the client themselves or the couple themselves, a lot of times I'm standing right next to the photographer. So I'll even just, kind of under my breath mention to them like, hey, when you're done with this, there's something I'd like to get. Is that okay? Or hey, before you move their position,
yep.
I want to try something out,
Yep.
And that's great because, again, it shows that you're considerate of their needs. You're putting them first. You're saying, hey, when you're done getting what you need, do you mind if I do this? Most of the time, they're going to be, oh yeah, of course, for sure. Mm-hmm. And they'll even help you, right? They'll might verbalize that to the couple themselves for you. Many times when I say that, we'll have like the couple will just kind of naturally, maybe when they sense that the photo session is kind of, or that pose is kind of ending, they're like getting out of it. But the photographer will be like, oh, wait, guys, video needs to get something. Yes. Or sometimes then they start even helping you, like, hey, can we get a little bit more movement for video? They need that type of stuff, So then they're starting to be considerate of your needs because you've kind of, showed that.
Even something as like as thoughtful as like, I will always tell them like, hey, if you don't mind, when we're transitioning between locations, I would love to be able to get all that footage because I need all those in between moments. Are you going to want to shoot any of those? Mm-hmm. From what direction? Do you like behind, or like, do you want to shoot their backs, or do you want to shoot like, because some of them will use those to get like back address details, tight hand shots, the types of shots that they want. That might be a little more drag shuttery or just different things that they need to do. Knowing about the types of shots photographers want, I think is a big thing. I think knowing their focal length. One thing I always try to do is shoot a 20 more than whatever they're doing in a session. Almost never shoot wider than your photographer.
Right.
You want to, like, most of the times I see people, they're like, this guy. And it's like, you shot the whole thing on a 35 millimeter lens and they're on a 50 mil.
Right. What do you expect? Yeah.
How, like, you're dumb, dude. Sorry. And like, well, I can't. It's like the fact that you can't afford two lenses is not that person's problem. Like, maybe you should have bought a 24-70 instead of a 35 millimeter lens. Like, but like considering even the lens choices you're making in a session based on what they are doing, I always ask them at the very beginning of the session, what lens are you on?
Yeah.
I always ask that.
And understanding, what their focal length looks like, so that way you're not getting in their shots. A lot of that comes from experience and just years of doing it. But I'm good at like knowing where I can stand to just be outside of their angle if I'm trying to get a different side shot or something like that. Because the last thing I want to have happen is them tell me, Lindsey, hey, you're in my shot. I don't want that.
Yep.
The other thing I was going to say is I had something I learned a few years ago. We were doing a wedding in Cabo, and we had we're working with this photographer, and he kept saying during the portrait session, he's like, "Hey, Lindsey, do you need anything?" And I'm thinking I'm being considerate by saying, "Oh no, I'm good. Yeah, you got it, man. This is great. I'm having a great time." And he kept asking me, "Hey, do you need anything?" I'm like, "No, I'm great." And I'm thinking, man, I'm killing it. I'm super easygoing. This is great. We're vibing. Well, later on, we're taking a break, and the photographer comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, just so you know, when I'm asking you if you need anything, I don't necessarily care if you need anything, but I'm just kind of out of ideas in the moment, and I need just a mental break."
Yep.
So whether or not you need anything, if you could just jump in there and do something for me, just to help me reset a little bit and like think what we're going to go through next, that would be awesome. And that floored me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like that makes so much sense.
We always talk about being a creative partner with our team. Like you there's definitely like you can definitely step on toes, and I think that's a line. I don't know how to necessarily always figure out where the line is, but I know like if I have a good idea, I'm just gonna say the good idea, and there's a right way and a wrong way to say it. But like, but I'm gonna bring to the table good ideas. Like, hey, maybe we should have them walk down those stairs, or maybe like I have an idea for this sequence. And anytime I know I want something, like I said before, I'm gonna tell them, hey, I want to shoot the couple going down this spiral staircase. Do you want this too? Where can I stand that will not be in your way? Like, just including them in my inspiration, I think is really what it is. Is like, if I have a great idea and it's not going to take any out of, and I don't want it to take any of their time. That's the key. Right. Is like, it's going to be when they're transitioning from location to location or within the context of what we're already doing. I'm just going to nicely bring it up and give them an opportunity to respond. I think exactly what you're saying is like, these people, they're looking for people to bounce ideas off of.
Right. Yeah. Inspiration,
Yep.
I mean, even like much of this podcast and this conversation we're having is like we're bouncing things off of each other, and we're thinking of things, that based on what the other person mentioned. So it's the same thing in a portrait session. Like you inspire each other, but the biggest thing is how do you approach the photographer with this? How do you speak to them? How do you communicate these things to them in such a way that they feel good about it? They feel that collaborative process. Instead of feel like you're taking away.
Yeah, and you'll know, if that person's open or not. It's hard to really describe, but I think you'll know. And the other thing I was going to say is related to portrait sessions is when I'm getting a weird vibe from a couple, I might say to them, hey, what was your engagement session like with them?
You'll say that to the photographer?
Yeah. And just get them.
And what do they say?
And they'll say something like, well, not very, and then I'm thinking like, and then I'll say like, so I'm getting that sense too, that they're not super affectionate. And so, I might need to coach them a little more during the session. Would that be okay? Because I'm getting a sense like if we don't tell them, they're not going to naturally move or they're not going to do anything. They're just going to stand there like statues. But like, I have to get permission to be that assertive. And like, and I can tell, like, when a photographer wants me to be very quiet, have a certain energy during the portrait session, and
I can't imagine you like that.
I do it. I just stand there, like I just let them. Like I'm gonna try to notice that when they're fighting my energy, because it's what makes them feel comfortable, and it's the way they want to be. Their brand is like a very calming brand. Yeah. And at the end of the day, like I'm going to take what they give me in the portrait session. I'm not going to fight them. I find a lot of the more high-end weddings have the worst portrait sessions.
It's true. There's a lot going on. We have a lot of high expectations. At some of these higher-end weddings, everyone there is expected to be a professional and be able to do their job right away. And we actually had to kind of shift our priorities a little bit. As we started doing these higher end weddings and having less time with the couple, we used to think the portrait session is it. This is everything. This is what our entire film is based off of.
30% of our shots minimum.
Right, exactly. And we had to adjust our thinking on that because sometimes we don't get that time. And I think personally our style and our films are better for it. And now when I watch videos where, like you said, like 90% of it is just shots of the couple, I'm like, well, there's so much more happened, that was significant than just that portrait session. Well, and
also you got to know it's not a sustainable model, because the more you work with wealthy people, the less likely they are to want to take part in your perfume commercial.
Right. Exactly. So true. At the end of the day, why are we even having this conversation? Why do we want photographers to love us?
I want to work.
It's because we want to work. If you want to do what you love, if you love creating videos, if you love doing weddings, if you want to charge more, if you want to be able to get weddings that are at a certain caliber, like these are some of the things that we found are easy ways of getting people to love working with you and referring you those jobs and helping you be successful.
So one other thing about shooting, I was going to ask you about wedding day. Like I feel like receptions are the least conflicty time because photographers don't seem to care about receptions really. They're just like, oh, whatever. They like, take like 3 shots, leave. Like sometimes I'll look over there at the bar, like, and I'm like locked onto my tripod, white knuckling a 30-minute speech. But I think ceremonies are major areas of conflict.
Yes.
With photographers, and like. On one hand, I am sympathetic to filmmakers who don't have all the gear. I had a photographer tell me like, oh, I was so happy when you guys showed up. You had all the right gear, and so I knew it was going to be not a problem. A lot of people show up
all
with
the long lenses.
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
like
They
that,
show up with no equipment, and then they can't cover the event because they're only walking around on a 35 mil all day. So I'm sympathetic to that, though, because it's like, I get it. You can't just buy everything. But regardless, I think at the end of the day, there are things you can do during during a wedding ceremony that will keep them from hating you and actually make them love you a lot. So what do you find is the best way to work with a photographer during the ceremony?
Yeah, again, it all goes back to communication. So before the ceremony starts, communicate, let them know, how you operate, how you want to operate, where your cameras are going to be. We always have our 2 cameras on the outside of, in a traditional, type of format.
Bridegroom kind of cross-up shot.
Exactly. So outside, long lenses, 70 to 200s. We have we'll usually have like a roving camera, which is usually my camera in the back, and I'm kind of getting people as they're walking, down or I should say up the aisle, down the aisle, whatever you want to call it. And I'm kind of shooting them from behind. Cherish will usually be up front, next to the photographer. So she's standing, next to the photographer, getting those shots and making sure, to stay out of their way. And then I'm also cognizant of, okay, if they're on which side of the aisle, because most photographers are not standing in the middle of the aisle.
Yep.
Some do, but most are not. They're usually off to one side. So I stay on the same side of that aisle to make sure that I'm not in their angle, right? Or I'm easier to crop out. Same thing with one of my favorite shots that we get is following the bride down the aisle, getting that back of the dress shot as she's like walking towards the groom. I'm a big guy but I crouch really low. I make sure I cannot see that the front of their lens. Cause if that lens,
what's the classic thing they say in family portraits? If I can't see you, you can't see me. Or if you can't see me, I can't see you. Well, the adverse is true. If you can see them, they can see you.
If I can see that lens, I know it can see me. And so, to get that shot, I'm crouching really low, and then I'm usually, once I know that I have it, I don't linger. I get out of the aisle. I make sure that I'm now giving them, clean shot just in case I'm overlooking something and maybe I am visible. But it's easy to hide behind some of these bigger dresses, nowadays. Sometimes it's not so easy, but that's one of the things, like just being cognizant, communicating where are you going to be. I've had, weddings where the photographer, even higher end photographers, it's their style to shoot, ceremonies on 35 millimeter lenses.
Oh, it's so great.
Get up
Love
close and personal, which is fine. And,
Yeah.
I see these posts on Facebook where they're like, oh, this photographer, why don't they have a 70 to 200?
Why would they?
Those
those lenses don't
happen,
look the same, right? There's a thing called compression.
It changes a style, and so if the photographer, that's their style, and they, want to shoot up close and with a 35, I'll go up there with them. It's like I'll just change, and so being adaptable is part of that too.
Yeah.
And also thinking about where I place for my down the aisle shot. A lot of times I'm shooting that with just my gimbal camera. I'll usually set my gimbal kind of in the middle of the aisle, but I always make sure that the photographer's cool with it.
Hey, did you get your wide shot already?
Exactly.
Anything that you have to have a shot list in your brain of every shot they need. And they need that wide shot. And some of them are like, I need it during rings.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you want? What do you need?
Yep. So if that's important to them, ask them. So yes, before I I'll go get my wide shots in the back with my, with the Ronin and the gimbal, and I'm getting all that stuff. And then before I kind of get my static down the aisle shot, I will ask the photographer, hey, did you get your wide shots? Can I go down there and get that? And same thing with like when I am in the middle of the aisle, to get my ring shots, to get the kiss, and then to get them processing back down the aisle, I'm off center.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take that real estate. As much as, sometimes I would love it,
Yeah.
To be right
That'd be
down
great.
the center, I give it to the photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, just something that we do to.
I always
to
tell
again-
people, if you can shoot telephoto, like our 24-70 or some kind of zoom lens on your gimbal, and you have the ability and you like the look, that's my secret. I shoot 24-70 on that gimbal. And
Yeah, so do I.
and I'll tell them, like, what are you going to shoot the recessional with? Oh, 50 mil? Okay, I can shoot 70. I'll go over your shoulder. Like,
Yeah.
or, whatever. I'll go really high. But whatever. I just want to, everything is all about, like, letting this person know during this very important part of the day that you are cognizant of their needs. A lot of them are are you going to set up a tripod in the center aisle? That's a big thing. I don't know. You're probably not getting that because you're working at a different level. But the people in our market, they ask us that question because the amount of photographer, like filmmakers will literally go 4 rows deep with a tripod. And I'm like, are you nuts? Like, how inconsiderate can you be? Like, and it's like, oh, well, they're not the only ones who are important. I'm like, ask the couple how they feel about that. The couple doesn't not want a wide shot of their ceremony. Like, if you have that mindset, you need to get over yourself and you need to really consider the impact you're having on this person's photos. You are ruining their photos. You don't have to ruin their video to shoot off center in the back row. That is fine. That's a good shot.
Right.
There's
Exactly.
there's nothing wrong with that shot. But if you're in every one of their wedding photos, that is unequivocally a bad photo. The other thing I was going to say about doing portraits or doing, like, obviously we want to make them love them, but for you to not get bent out of shape as a filmmaker is, I always tell the photographer at the beginning of the day, you can always walk in my shot. It doesn't matter to me. You're part of the day. I say, the only thing I ask is that during the vows or during the toast, you don't stand in front of my telephoto. That's all I ask.
Yep.
That's all, because I need that. I need those lips moving.
Yes.
Other than that, I don't care if they walk in front of my wide shot the whole time. I'm not going to worry about it. The couple, the couple doesn't care. The couple's not going to be like, why is this photographer in all my images?
Because they were there.
They were physically there.
Exactly.
I don't get so bent out of shape because I'm like, this is documentary work is what I tell the couples. And the photographer was part of the day. So like I release that photographer to do whatever they want to do. Whatever they need to do. And like, I think like the more you can show them that you understand their needs and let them know that you are willing to bend to what their needs are for the good of the client, the more they're going to love working with you, even during that ceremony time, which is typically where I think all the tension happens, right?
Exactly. I was thinking too, for us, in line with that point, our ideal couple, they don't want the overly stylized or overly produced wedding. They want it to be authentic. That's the type of person that hires us. If they want something that's like super, creative and like just, posed and everything like that, they'll hire somebody else. But
who wants that for their
typically-
ceremony? Like, honestly.
Right. Exactly. It's real. It's authentic. It's like you said, it's documentary. And so I always tell people that we're going to document your day. We're going to do our best that we can to make it as cinematic and beautiful and just visually stunning as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, we're there to document what happens, you know? And so that's what it's all about. And so working with photographers is great. Sometimes if I'm flying the drone, I'll get still images for the photographer. They love that. A lot of our photographers, they're bringing drones anyway, but they're busy, and so I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll get those shots for you. What do you need? We'll send them the files.
Whatever I can do to help. I'm here for you.
Whatever I can do to help.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for credit or anything,
I don't need credit. That's what I always try to tell people is like, I'm running a business. Like, I'm here to help you. Like, you refer me, I'm going to make more money on that than I would like on you getting my name out there. Like, I always, so let's talk about reception and then we can kind of wrap this one up. Like, mostly, like I said, I don't think most most conflict isn't happening at receptions, and there's not a ton we can really do for each other. I find I feel like we have a lot more to do at receptions than photographers do. So keeping that in mind, like,
Yeah, with
I
all
feel
the
like
toasts and everything.
yeah, I feel like we have a lot of stuff. For me, some simple things when I think about the reception are the entrance. Am I going to follow them in with my gimbal? Okay. I always ask, can I do this? I always tell them, how far back would you like me to be? Simple things like that. And then the other thing is, if I'm going to do a little loopy-loop, like, around them on the floor, I'm going to do it one freaking time.
Yep.
And then I'm going to be off that dance floor. And I am not going to stand around on the interior of the dance floor making orbital gimbal moves the entire freaking time these people are dancing. That is
I don't want to. My
tacky.
lifelong goal. Yeah, my lifelong goal is to not end up on like a TikTok or something where I'm like circling around the couple on the dance floor or something
And
like
it
that.
looks better if you do it behind the crowd anyway, guys. Having the foreground.
It does. Foreground.
It's beautiful.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, you want to see those hands raising in the toast. You want to see people clapping. You don't want to just see this weird shot. I'm like, whatever. There's nothing wrong with getting like a non-intrusive gimbal move of someone on the dance floor. But like, do not stand in front of the entire wedding the entire time. You're going to be in their shots. It's going to ruin their shots. Don't do it.
For us, the toasts are super important at a reception. And so we let the photographer know where we're going to be. A lot of times, Cherish she's always our main camera on the toaster, and she's always trying to, we mentioned foreground earlier, get some like beautiful foreground, candlelight, whatever centerpieces in the shot of the toaster. And so a lot of times people don't know. Like, she's not visible,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
people
That's why I always
She's
tell
in the
them,
dark
because if we're in the
somewhere.
back of the room or something, they can't even see you because you're shooting at 7200 over a table.
Correct. So you got to communicate that stuff, and they're going to get in your shot once in a while. It is going to happen. They're going to forget. So we just communicate. I'll Cherish and I usually have radios and stuff. And she'll be like, hey, so and so's in my shot, and so I'll just, hey, psst, and then, oh, sorry, because by this time you've already established, even if it's a photographer you haven't worked with, if you've done all these things that we're talking about, by this time you are friends.
Mutual respect is there.
You have respect for each other. And so because the whole, most of the beginning of the day, you've been considerate of them. When you need something, they're going to give it to you. They're going to be considerate of you. And and then, by the time you're having vendor meals, you're, swapping stories and you're getting to know each other on a personal level.
I would just say this. Don't crap talk people.
Yes, 100%. You don't know who knows who.
Don't crap talk people during vendor meals. If they want to do it, you can laugh.
Right.
But like don't be the guy. Don't
engage.
Don't open the discussion. Don't like you want to be the good vibes person.
That's right. 100%.
If possible, you can, and bring that positivity. That's not easy for me. I love crap talking people. So, but I know during those times, it's like, you got to be smart and build that loyalty. And so the wedding's over. Typically, there's not a ton we can do. I would just tell you one thing I try to do is that at the very least include them in my release in some way. And tag them and like you might be like a new brand and it's not a massively big deal to them to be tagged. But at the very least you're reminding them, hey, I exist. We had fun, and look, I'm pretty good at what I do, because they have no indication if you're good at that point. It's not like they're going to be like, go look at your work. They don't care. I don't look at all their work. So sometimes I try, but I don't always. So I think that to me is like a big thing. And then I think we talked about this with planners, but outside of the wedding, what do you do to nurture the relationships with these people besides just like tagging people?
Yeah. That is part of it, sharing our work with them, tagging them, sharing their photos, even if we're not tagged in it, right? If they're, posting the photos from the wedding, we'll share their work. I think that's good. But I said this in our planner episode, and I'm going to say it here again. Just think how you would treat a good friend or family member. What if you cared about somebody? What would you do for them to show that you care? And it's the same principles behind, in the industry when you're trying to get, authentically someone to, build relationship with them. So just, texting them once in a while, if they're having a baby, a photographer we just work with just had a baby, and, they posted on Instagram or Facebook, we had this baby, and they're getting all kinds of comments. Ooh, congratulations. I actually reached out to them personally and texted them, said, hey, congrats. That's awesome. You're a father now. That's great. And that's something that now we have in common because I'm a dad too. And so that shows more, that goes above and beyond, and hopefully shows them that you care a little bit more than just, an emoji on a post or something like that. But supporting their wins, congratulating them if you see they're doing something, reaching out to them if maybe they're going through something difficult. There's natural disasters.
Well, and following up too.
Follow
up with people. Like I remember a friend of ours got into a bad tax situation because of idiot CPA screwed up some stuff for them, and they got it really affected them. And the next time I worked with him, we talked, and then the year after that, I brought it up again. Hey, how did that get resolved?
And you showed you cared. You remembered.
Yeah.
For my really close friends and family, when somebody has a relative that passes away, I'll usually put that in my calendar, the date, and I'll text them or I'll reach out to them or call them, or even anniversaries, stuff like that, important dates for people. So that's something that you could do and reach out to them around that time of year.
Even if it's just the work that you have in common. Here's the thing I'll say, we're talking kind of advanced stuff, right? They've let you in a little bit and you have something to give back, right? You don't always have that with people. And one of the things I do with people who I really love and respect sincerely is I might not get into that personal stuff. I might literally just be like, hey, I just wanted to text you and say, I've noticed your work is just next level this year. And I really, really love what you're doing. Just like something
that goes so far.
Something that shows that you care about them beyond that that the art that they're making is something that is a part of themselves. And this is what I'll say. This is what pains me about our industries is when people don't view each other as symbiotic, you're actually harming yourself because these people are a part of you. We're all artists and we're all trying to create something, and very few people understand what it's like to put yourself out there every single week and be treated like a servant. And really you want to be an artist and no one really appreciates you, and you're releasing this stuff and it's just a commodity for some person to make money off of. And the only person who understands what that's like is the photographer. They're the only person who understands what it was like to work with that crazy bride or whatever situation that you were in with them. And so to treat them like an enemy is a really, really, it's a missed opportunity to have real camaraderie with people who understand what you're going through. And just because you're not making videos doesn't mean that they don't understand what it's like. Everyone who works in weddings has had the thought where they said, am I a real artist? I'm doing weddings. That's fake art. Am I still good? Am I good at this? Everyone feels that way from time to time. These people included. And so if you're looking for people to commiserate with and to build community with, my experience, by the way, is that I enjoy a lot what I get out of photographers more than filmmakers. They're just too similar. Yeah. We're too similar. We're competing for the same clients. And I feel like photographers is we can have real, no strings attached community. And I think that's a missed opportunity for you. And if you really want them to love you, you should love them.
I love it.
And that's my period. So, Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know we talked a while, 2 episodes. I want to remind people, go check out the Lutz on larevlutz.com. Support this guy. He's a true blue person. He's doing well. He doesn't really need all your money, but I think giving him respect and appreciation for what they're bringing to the table, to the industry, is something that I think they deserve. And so if you want to support them, head over there, buy the Lutz. I think also let them know, tag them when you use the Lutz. Show people that you're using them. Reach out and let them know that you love them. Tell them that you don't love them, right?
I'll take that too. Yeah.
These kind of suck. The IRE is way off on the skin tones. But whatever.
They could be. They really could be.
They really could be. Thank you so much for coming on the show, though, Lindsey.
I appreciate it, Jason. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. And also, thanks for what you do for the community, too. It's awesome
Someday,
to have,
hopefully, we can see each other in real life again.
Yeah, maybe at WPPI or something. We'll figure that out.
I saw your wife over the summer. That was nice.
You did. Thank you.
Flew drone. But
you helped us out with the wedding. That was awesome.
But thank you so much for coming on, and we really, really appreciate what you're doing for wedding filmmaking. If you liked what we do, follow us, like us, do all the YouTube stuff on Wedding Film School Show and our main channel, Wedding Film School, and of course, subscribe to the podcast. And you know what really helps us? Let someone know that you enjoy it. Share a podcast episode, share a video, let people know that you love this episode. Tell them how great Lindsey is, whatever. We really appreciate it, guys. Have an awesome day. Check out the next episode of the Wedding Film School Show.